many of you have ever had the unfortunate privilege of witnessing the toddler tantrum? It's terrible, right? The crying, the screaming, the parents like myself trying to use logic and reason with 3-year-olds. Well, this is exactly where I found myself on a Sunday morning this past summer. Only the kicker was, I was at church. Now, my family goes to church regularly, but for some reason, on this particular Sunday, my 3-year-old daughter, Juniper Ruth, decided that it was a grave injustice that there weren't more snacks and snack breaks at church. And so my husband Travis and I, we were trying to handle this situation, which basically means it was going terribly. And so I did the only thing I could think of to do, which is I scooped Juniper onto my lap. I held her really tight, closed my eyes, and I took a deep breath. And I did the internal mother scream for help. And when I opened my eyes, I was shocked to realize that help had arrived. Unfortunately, though, that help had arrived in the form of a bear. A big, beautiful black bear was walking straight towards my family and I in the middle of church. Now, there might be some confusion at this point, because what did you picture when I said my family went to church? A building? Some pews? It's not exactly bear country, right? But what I mean when I say my family goes to church is that we go out into nature and we talk about spirituality. We've come to call this do-it-yourself church. And we've been doing it for 4 years, and it has changed our lives. Now, Travis and I stumbled into this practice. When I was pregnant, he asked me, "Do you think that we'll join a church once we're parents?" And we talked about it, and as we did, we were really sure we wanted spirituality in our family life. And we were also really sure that we did not feel like we fit in any of the regular churches. And we kind of didn't know what to do. And perhaps you have had this same question or dilemma at some point in your life. And then a couple of weeks later, we were out for a hike, and we picked back up the conversation. Only this time, we asked some other questions. And these were, why can't being outside, which we both love so much, be our church? And why can't we be as committed to it as other people are to inside church? And of course, the answer to these questions is that we could. And so that's exactly what we did. Now, I think one of the reasons this practice has stuck for my family is that it's simple. I'm the mother of a small child. It has to be simple. So first, pick a day and time and commit to the practice and keep that commitment. 2, go out into nature and spend time being with nature. Turn off your devices. 3, pick a spiritual theme or reading, maybe a piece of poetry, and bring it with you. And while you're outside, reflect on it. Talk about it. And if you can, take a piece of it and post it in your house somewhere so that during the week you see it. And that's it. 3 simple steps. But in addition to the simplicity, I think DIY church has also stuck for us because it's profound. It has an impact. As an example, a couple of weeks ago, I had had a really long week. And when I woke up Sunday morning, I was tired and I was cranky. And the last thing that I felt like doing was spending a whole morning with my family in a location that would not provide adequate coffee. But because of the commitment, we went and we drove up into the mountains. And then when we got there, Travis and I proceeded to have our favorite fight, which is, are we going to take this beautifully established trail, or are we going to bushwhack either up or down the side of a mountain? And I'm sure you're really clear from my tone where I fall on this. But I love trails. My husband hates them. And on this particular Sunday, I lost the argument. And so I found myself slipping and sliding down this mountain slope. But as I was doing it, I noticed that I was changing, because the act of getting down that mountain slope became a form of meditation. And I stopped holding so tightly my anger and my tiredness. And then I looked up, and my heart was just filled with awe and joy, because I saw my brave Juniper Ruth making her way down this same slope. And at the same time, she was singing a song about sharks and cupcakes and sticks. And it sounds like a terrible song, but she had managed to craft it into a ridiculous and beautiful hymn, at least to my mama ears. And we all made it safely down. And when we got there, we found this beautiful little creek that we had been looking for. And we took out a book that we had been reading about compassion. And we read and we talked about compassion. And then because we have a 3-year-old, we talked about whether sharks have the capacity for compassion. We're still unclear about that. But I was not the same woman I had been when I had woken up as I was by the end of that day. And to me, this is why DIY church is so profound, because it encourages you to notice and it invites you to change. And after a couple of years, I noticed that my family was changing in some pretty significant ways. We were all vastly less stressed, and our schedules were less hectic. And our health had improved. We were cooking and eating at home most nights, and Travis and I managed to tackle some pretty big health habit changes that we had been unable to do for years. Now, it was these health habit changes that really got me wondering, because in addition to being a mom and a wife and a lover of trails, I am also a graduate student in public health, and I'm passionate about data and research. And so I started to wonder, what does the research say about spirituality and health and nature? And so I looked into this research, and I want to share just 2 things that I learned that really impacted me on a personal level. So first, spirituality is like this amazing buffer. So when life gets hard, as it does for each and every one of us, spirituality can help keep us from running over that cliff into addictions and depression. In short, it makes us more resilient. Second, our bodies, they love nature, turns out. There's now a number of research studies that show that when we spend more time in nature, markers of health that researchers look at, things like blood pressure, cholesterol, mental health, these improve. And even our capacity for empathy. Now, I'll be honest and say that I would have kept doing DIY church even if I'd found nothing in the research to support it. But the fact that I did has definitely made me more committed to the practice and is really what encouraged me to want to share what is a personal family practice with all of you. Because I really do believe that everyone, you, can craft a meaningful DIY church practice, and I believe that doing so will improve your health. I also believe that if you're already the member of a church or another faith community and you love that, this practice still has merit. Take something that you hear in church out for a hike or a walk and see how nature changes you and changes that message that you heard. But I want to make sure that I answer the most important question, which of course is, what about the bear in the middle of church? Well, it turns out bears are no match for the toddler tantrum. That bear assessed the situation, heard the crying and the screaming, spun right around, ran up the hill as fast as it could. And Juniper Ruth, who I was hoping would have this awe-inspired nature moment at seeing her first bear, turned to me and said, and I quote, "Mama, I don't care about bears right now. I want my snacks." And I know this sounds like a total church failure, this whole scene. But to me, it's the perfect example of why DIY church is so amazing. Because in that moment, my humanity around things like dealing with a toddler tantrum were pressed right up against my spiritual ideals around patience and love. And then a bear entered the mix, and I had to just throw up my hands and laugh and try to learn that lesson yet again, that grace comes in many forms, and most often, not the form I want. DIY church is a simple and profound practice. I invite each and every one of you to try it. But please, please, bring enough snacks. Thank you.